What's up?
What's going on?
You want a waffle?
I want to thank Cone first off for getting me involved in this, and Megan for helping me develop this speech. I'm not a public speaker, but I'm going to do my best here. So I started Stash Design a couple years ago, about 6 years ago to be precise. And but originally I grew up in East Dallas, went to First Baptist Academy, and then ended up at UT Austin. Studied history with a minor in, and got a minor in business, with really no direction of what I wanted to do with either of those degrees. I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. So when I graduated, I immediately had started applying for jobs. I had a client ask me if I could build a treehouse. Never had done it, but I was like, sure, I can give it a shot. And drew a couple pictures, gave them a budget, and they said go. So I was off building tree houses in Austin for about a year before I decided to go to Colorado with a guy I'd met at the time in Austin. He was an older gentleman that had been all over the world finding gems and mines, and he was really outside the box. He really started giving me another perspective on what I was doing. I was going to Home Depot, buying all these materials, you know, taking designs and creating designs around that. New materials, you know, pressure treated woods and stuff like that. But as I got into that, I realized that this, you know, a lot of these materials weren't that good. They were treated with all kinds of chemicals. But then the guy I was working with, Bob, he started telling me, he's like, why don't you just use stuff that's free, you know? I mean, there's stuff all over the place. And I said, really? Well, show me. So for the next 6 months, 8 months, a year or so, we worked together building tree houses, benches, and different stuff out of pallet wood we were pulling out of dumpsters at tile companies and granite companies. And this is exotic wood coming from Brazil, India, China, all over the world. You're getting hardwoods that had been cut less than a couple months and then shipped here immediately and still in very good condition. Well, if we didn't get them, they would go directly into a landfill or be crushed, burned, whatever. So he started giving me another perspective on how to build things and how to design things and what to design around. It wasn't just, you know, oh, get on the internet, buy this, go to the Home Depot, go to Lowe's, buy. It was what's out there that's free. I mean, look out the window right there. You see a pile of pallets just sitting there, ready to go trash, or whoever picks them up and finds a use for them. And it's everywhere. Once you start getting the idea, you start to expand what your thought process on what could be used for different things. So I ended up in Colorado for a while finding pallets. Got a job here, which ended up bringing me back here, which was building these tables right here. These were built with Douglas fir that I found from a deck company in Colorado. So I got on Craigslist, found a deck company that was throwing stuff away, got a full entire load of lumber that still had a lot of life in it. A lot of it was damaged, but we were able to take that, pull the nails out of it, put the rotted side on the bottom, you know, paint it, protect it, cover it up, but there's still a lot of life on the other side of it. So I built these tables by hand. It was learned from this older gentleman, Bob, that showed me the process of taking this material and developing it into usable material. So did that for a while, and then started Stash Design once I saw the need for all these products. The market was there, you know, especially in the restaurant industry. There's I was just like, I was in all portions of that industry, putting together tables, booths, building different portions of it. And all I was seeing was stuff shipped in from China. Bases that were broken before they were even unpackaged. $20, everything was $20 or less and made out of the worst material, fall apart, break. So I decided that I would give it a shot and start this company called Stash that would take that material back, save it, educate people on this material, what's out there, how to get it, where to go, what companies, who's throwing away what. And it led me down so many different paths. There's so many opportunities. It started opening up just by having the material and being willing to take the time and effort to use it. It created it generated business. People saw it, and there's a huge movement behind it now. But there's not a whole lot of people that actually have been in the industry and know how to use it. I remodeled homes with my dad my whole life.
Can I give you this one?
Sure.
We're going to try to get rid of that beeping. Sorry, guys.
Oh,
Is that better?
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I saw that I had an advantage, and an opportunity to take all these skills I had learned through construction, working with architects, designers with my dad, fixing old things. I mean, me and my dad would go all over town fixing anything from a fountain to a door to, he wouldn't say no to anything. So he constantly was sourcing and finding different ways to do things. And that, gave me the base that I could then use to connect designers, architects, builders to a different way, utilizing different materials, different processes, not just going and finding what's easy, but finding another way to do it. So I'll try to stay focused here. I have a lot to say about this issue. So when Megan came to me, she said, the topic we were thinking you'd speak about is beyond. And there's so much in this industry that has to do with beyond or the future. And so I just started putting down things that I thought fit this topic. And here's a couple. Clean society without waste is the vision I have for beyond. Reducing and eliminating bad practice with sustainable innovation, education, entrepreneurship, and creative funding. Low tech, using anything that has value and creating value around low tech versus complicating design. A lot of people in architecture and building don't think outside the box, and you have to in order to reuse all of this stuff, to come up with new ways to innovate. The future of biodegradable, reusable products, protecting what is left on the planet, less landfills, more separation and processing, change of practice, code, material identifying, developing, and design. So there are three things within this that I wanted to focus on. First, I want to talk about upcycling, which is just taking something and making it into something else, or reusing it in another way, whether it's taking two chairs and putting boards in between them and making a bench out of them, or a table. There's a million ways to reuse things. Recycling. I'm not a big fan of recycling. I think a lot of times the recycling process is actually more harmful than actually just reusing or breaking it down in specific ways. An example of that would be metal companies. Everything in a metal company that gets recycled generally gets broken down outside. You get refrigerators with all kinds of chemicals in them that are broken down and then rain, and then that goes into our streams and in our land and pollutes the water. So we really have to think outside of the box and not think of it in that way, but more in reuse and downcycling also, which is breaking things down in an environmentally friendly way to reuse them. So design is where I'm going to start. Design is everything. You know, we'll take this stage, for example. When I was brought onto that project, they had a design using the large 500-gallon tanks that they have out there. So I offered the owners a different direction off of a design I had seen, which was a huge egg made out of pallets. So I was like, well, why don't we take this and recreate this this idea you have, the stage, with pallets. You know, it doesn't have to be structural necessarily. It just has to be, you know, visually pleasing, but we can also reuse something that will be in the landfill most likely. So we put together this design and developed it, and it turned out to be a really eye-opening thing for that neighborhood. You know, the people really latched onto it and saw a different way of doing things. You know, design has been a thing for me that has developed over time. I mean, when I started Stash Design, I really didn't know much about design process. So I started basically just coming up with my own process. Like, I know that when you go to design school, you're going to be taught to do things certain ways. Well, the only way I knew to do it was to create the products myself. Create things like, instead of buying chairs, we'll make the chairs, we'll make benches, we'll make tables, we'll make the bases for the tables. We'll try and create everything around this process of reuse and use local people if we can. So I started with the Belmont Hotel and Chicken Scratch, and I was given the opportunity to do something that I really didn't have a whole lot of experience doing, but those people trusted my vision as an artist, but also as a designer. So I was able to take a lot of things, very raw process at this time. I was working out of what is now Bab's Barbecue, I believe. A tin box, 120 degrees in the summer, minimal, very basic tools. But most people wouldn't even try that. Like, it's just too miserable sometimes to work around these processes, pulling nails out of pallets all day and then using tools that barely work. But we just made it work. You know, we made stuff happen that most people generally wouldn't even attempt. So as I was getting into the design, it really became about sourcing my materials. What do I have to work with? Wood was an easy source. Metal was generally an easy source, but wood was the most prevalent and easy to get. So that's kind of where the focus began, because I was able to generate income off of that quickly and easily. So I just began designing everything I had around everything that we needed within the restaurants or retail or office around what we were getting. In design, you have to have open clients. You know, the clients can't be like, no, I want this exact look. You know, when you're reusing and repurposing, it has to be, you have to have some balance there, because you're not always going to get a consistent look. And that's going to become more and more difficult as the way people built for many years was around good solid materials. Then there was, which was probably the 40s, 50s, 60s. And then in the 70s, 90s, a lot of material processes became really bad, like laminates, composites, all of that stuff is really hard to reuse. So like a lot of stuff I reuse is from the 40s, 50s, 60s, woods, old growth pine, stuff like that. So with that being said, it kind of goes into how I guess the future of this process. Like when these next wave of houses start coming down, you're not going to get a lot of reusable materials out of them like you do the 40s, 50s houses, the M Streets, the Oak Cliffs. All those houses have a lot of reusable materials. You get into these 80s developments, you're going to have a lot of bad materials that need to go and be put back into a landfill safely. So as we go forward, code is going to determine a lot of that. Code is what I have to work around all the time. Like I work backwards. When I got into this industry, I knew that I needed to know what I was talking about when I went into a meeting with a contractor, a designer, or an architect. So I went and educated myself through and I got certified as a home inspector. So I then knew all the codes within home, which I pretty much already knew, but I actually knew what the city was looking for. There's a lot of delays, barriers when you work in commercial projects through the code. So we have to be creative all the time to develop a new process to work and finagle around these I see them as barriers for safety, but as we get new products and new materials every day with new technologies, the code is going to have to start flexing a little bit in order to build more efficiently and effectively. Let's see here. This stage is a good example of that. What you call something is everything within the code. You know, if you call it a stage, it's not legal. If you call it a backdrop, it's legal. So you have to get really creative as you're thinking about these things and what you call them, how you build them exactly. When I got into it, the standards and the education that I started with was seat heights, table heights, widths, lengths, all that stuff that you have to work around in commercial developments, which is, sitting down, touching things all the time. So in order to design effectively, you really have to know those things. You have to know the code. You have to know the way people move, the way they sit, how, and everybody's different height, and so you have a lot of things you work around. But if you know those things and those dimensions and those variables, then it's a lot easier to develop products around something and reuse it. So I really focus on that a lot. But ultimately, with the code, I think as creatives, artists, we are going to have to really try to push and lobby to have some sort of variability in the code. When you get into projects and a code inspector doesn't know what a product is, they generally will just say no immediately and not let you use it. So you have to know what they're looking for, know how to, know that you can use this in this area, and a lot of that is important so that, say we get a ton of galvanized material from a source, we know that we can put it on certain walls in a restaurant, but we know we can't put it on another wall. Wipeable surfaces, all that is important. All right. So design, code, and then technology. I think technology is the real, where beyond really is most important, because the way I see technology developing products now, like we're going to get away more and more from metals and more away from wood materials, and everything's become a composite plastic of some sort that looks like a real material, printed everything. So which is good and bad in my opinion. You know, less cutting down trees is a good thing, you know, and as long as you can still get the look you want. In that, those materials, the biology of those materials is most important. The chemical makeup, how those materials are developed so that they don't become part of the problem later, which is the wave of China's products. You know, we constantly get pumped. We get all these products that are hazardous, and we just keep bringing them in and letting them come in, and it's going to be the downfall of our of the society if we're not careful, because we're just going to keep pumping in crappy batteries and plastics and into our land until there's nothing left. In that, I think we really have to gear our codes, our laws towards having biodegradable products, things that break down, things that can be reused. They have a second life. You know, how many times can you use something before it's done? You know, this chair, for example, what else could you do with it once it's broken? You know, the standard would be to break it down and make it, you know, melt the plastic, melt the metal. In that process, you've caused a lot of problems. Now, is there another way to take that and reuse it? Maybe shred it, compress it, and make it a block for building a home or something, without the chemical process or the smelting process, which is what's really causing the problems, in my opinion, for our air, water, everything. So we have to find low-tech ways to build. We have to implement new products into our homes that are also safe for the world. So those are that was kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was design, code, and technology. I think those three really hammer home where beyond is for my industry. You really have to get outside of the box. You really have to not think a cup is a cup. You know, this is this. It has to be something else. I was always put in a box as, I'm an artist. You're an artist. You have to do this. You have to do that. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be an artist, and because you know, most artists find a medium and they stick with it. I'm kind of all over the map with my mediums, so I wanted to find a way to not only have multiple mediums, but also create a business out of it. So I found a market, restaurants, retail, office, but I also create art, functional art. A chair is art to me, a table, all of this stuff is art. But it's also a means to an end, which is a way to make a living, a way to help people, a way to network, a way to build artists around me. And ultimately, that's my goal, is to build up the community, Dallas especially, and build the scene here, which I feel there's a huge black hole. I mean, even in the last 4 years, I've seen it change, though. Like, from literally very few people out talking about art, doing much about, to a younger crowd getting involved with some of the older crowds and really connecting. And I see Dallas in the next 10 years as being one of the better art scenes to develop because of that empty space. We're bringing in people from all over the world now that see that opportunity. So I'm involved in a development called Tyler Station. We've moved our whole entire warehouse there. We have a full fabrication metal and wood shop, but we've also got a lot of extra square footage available to rent to small builders, artists, designers, whomever wants to come in and be part of the community. And it's not like a co-op where you come in and you get access to all these tools, but it's more like a networking co-op where you get access to other builders and designers, and you can work with them. And my goal is to bring in a lot of the people that are doing some of the local low-tech stuff and build them up through my projects. I get big budget design projects sometimes, so I'm able to pull in different people, whether it's the seat cushion for some chairs, I can pull in different people for that, or art pieces for the wall, bathrooms. There's always little projects throughout a big project that I can hopefully help support all local businesses. So that pretty much wraps up what I have to say about Beyond and recycling, and I hope that expands your mind a little bit about what I do, and maybe helps you to see things when you drive down the road differently, or see trash differently, I guess, and see things that they're not just see them for their second use, third use, fourth use. How many times can we use something before it ends up getting smelted, dumped, thrown away? So I guess now we do questions, or do we have time?